Okay, this time it'll be runway 4, turning left, 4252 Golf. Third time will be a charm.
That was Dana, and those were her final words before she made a tragic mistake and crashed in a parking lot near the airport. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one on board, and this tragedy never should have happened. That's why I'm going to tell her story and explain the truth about the mistake that got Dana killed. I'm Hoover, and welcome to your pilot debrief. Our story begins on the morning of June 9th, 2016, when Dana Gray was getting ready to take a flight from Oklahoma City down to Houston, Texas. Traveling with Dana was her husband, Tony, and they had just celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary. Also on board the plane was Tony's brother, Jerry, who was just 27 years old. And I think that one of the most tragic parts of the story is that the reason they were flying to Houston was to visit Tony and Jerry's father, who was undergoing cancer treatment. The aircraft they were flying in was a 2012 Cirrus SR20. This is a very safe aircraft to fly because it's equipped with modern technology, and one of the unique features of the aircraft is that it comes with a built-in parachute that Dana can use in emergency, but we'll talk more about what happened with that later. For right now, the main thing you need to know is they have plenty of fuel, and the aircraft was within the weight and balance limits for the flight. Additionally, the weather at the airport was VFR with broken clouds at 3,600 feet, but Dana remained clear of the clouds and below the weather for her flight into Houston. According to the investigation, Dana earned her private pilot certificate on May 2nd, 2014, and she had about 330 hours of total flight time with over 300 hours in the Cirrus SR20. However, one of the requirements for private pilots is that they accomplish a flight review at least once every 24 months, and at the time of the accident, Dana was overdue for this review by 1 month. Even though the NTSB didn't list this as a contributing factor to the crash, I thought it was worth mentioning because perhaps that review might have made just enough difference to prevent this tragedy. As Dana got ready for the flight, her plan was to fly into the Houston Hobby Airport, located on the south side of Houston, Texas. I think this was probably one of the first mistakes she made because the airport is in Class B airspace and Dana had very little experience doing something like this. In fact, the truth is Dana had only landed 4 times at airports located in Class B airspace over the last 2 years, and there was no evidence she had ever been into Houston Hobby before. The reason this is a problem for someone like Dana is because Class B airspace surrounds the busiest airports in America, and that means there's usually a lot of airliner traffic flying at much faster approach speeds than Dana was going to fly. That means she needed to have a very solid understanding of how to get into the airport, the runway configuration, and any contingencies that might come up. Specifically, the Houston Hobby Airport at the time of the tragedy had 4 runways. The winds were out of the east, and that meant all of the airliners were landing on runway 04. Now, there was nothing wrong with Dana planning to land on runway 4, but if there was too much airliner traffic, then she needed to be ready to land on runway 35, since that was the runway more commonly used by smaller airplanes. Now, I think a much better option for Dana would have been for her to land at the Sugar Land Regional Airport, and that way she could have stayed below the Class B airspace and she wouldn't have to worry about the airliners. That might mean driving an extra 45 minutes after she landed, but I can promise you that drive would have been a lot less stressful than what Dana had to go through. The truth is that most of the flight was uneventful as they made their way down to Texas, but as soon as Dana was told to contact the tower controller, that's when things started to go wrong.
Cirrus 4252 Golf at 1,500 feet.
Cirrus 4252 Golf Hobby, tower U number 2 following a 737 on a 3-mile final, calculate turbulence from a 4 clear to land.
Will be number 2 following the Boeing runway 4 clear to land. 4252 Golf.
Cirrus 52 Golf, maintain maximum forward to the speed of Fable and just proceed to direct the numbers. The 737 is on a 9-mile final following you with an 80 knot overtook.
Okay, we'll proceed direct to the numbers and keep the speed up. 4252 Golf.
Dana was cleared to land on runway 4, and when the controller told her to proceed direct to the numbers, he meant for her to point straight at the end of the runway. And that's because he was trying to sequence her between a couple of 737s that were also trying to land on runway 4. One of those airliners is 80 knots faster and rapidly closing in on her, and this is exactly the type of contingency that she needed to be prepared for in Class B airspace, and it's always going to happen when you least expect it. Now pay attention to what happens next and the timing of the radio calls.
Cirrus 52 Golf Tower.
4252 Golf.
Yeah, I got traffic behind you. Just go around and fly runway heading now. Maintain VFR. I'm going to put you back in a downwind from a 35. The winds are 09 or 0 at 13, gust 18. Can you accept runway 35?
We'll do go around and line up for runway 35, downwind.
52 Golf, fly runway heading from runway 4 for right now.
We'll fly runway heading for 4, 425 to golf.
First of all, I don't think there was anything wrong with the controller telling Dana to go around. Technically, he could have told the 737 to go around, but runway 35 was available and it was common practice for the tower to switch smaller aircraft over to that runway. That said, when the controller asked Dana if she could accept that, did you notice how she responded without any hesitation? The truth is what she should have said is stand by, because at that point she was still about a mile from runway 4 and there was no reason to rush things. She needed to think about the fact that the winds were 090 at 13 gusting to 18 knots. That meant if she was going to land on runway 35, then she'd have almost a direct crosswind of up to 18 knots and a tailwind of about 3 knots. If that was something she wasn't comfortable with or it exceeded the limits of the aircraft, all she had to say was unable, and chances are the tower controller would have sent her back to approach control to be resequenced for runway 4, and this mishap never would have happened. Instead, she agreed with the plan.
We're 52 Golf, when able, go ahead and make a right downwind now for runway 35, and then we'll just go ahead and keep that right turn, runway 35, clear to land.
Okay, make a right downwind for runway 35.
We're 52 Golf, yes, and just keep the right turn all the way around. You're just going to roll right into the base for runway 35, clear to land. I got another 737 on 5-mile final to runway 4, and you're going to be in front of him.
425 to golf, turning around for runway 35.
Okay, 52 Golf, yeah, let's just enter the right downwind for runway 35.
Right downwind 35, 425 to golf.
Or 52 Golf, I'll call your right base now.
This is where the downwind leg for runway 35 should be, and Dana was probably confused because she wasn't prepared and maybe unfamiliar with runway 35. She was only about 500 feet above the ground, so all he wanted her to do was fly past runway 35 and make a turn to keep the pattern tight so that way she could land on runway 35 before another 737 landed on runway 4. However, I think the controller eventually realized that spacing wasn't going to work, and that's why he just said, enter the downwind and I'll call your base. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the challenges of flying a small plane in Class B airspace. You have to be ready for it, but more importantly, if you're not, then you need to speak up and tell the controller, stand by or unable. You need to aviate, navigate, then communicate. Fly the plane first, figure out what you're doing and where you're going, and then talk to the controller. But instead of doing that, Dana started the turn downwind.
Cirrus 52 Golf 737, that's your 2 o'clock and 3 miles at 900 feet inbound for runway 4. Advise that traffic in sight.
I have traffic in sight, 425 to golf.
For 52 Golf, make a right base behind that traffic for runway 35, clear to land. You're going to be following them. They're going to be landing crossing runway prior to your arrival.
We'll make a right base following them, 425 to golf for 35.
When Dana started the turn to the downwind, she should have rolled out pointing south, but instead she kept turning until she was heading about 220, which is essentially on a downwind leg for runway 4. He verified she had the 737 in sight, but then look at what he said next. He wanted her to start a turn to land on runway 35 after the 737 landed on runway 4. Dana just didn't have enough experience to understand what was going on. And the bottom line is if things get confusing, you need to ask the controller what they want you to do, because when you don't, things are going to get worse.
Cirrus 52 Golf, make a turn left heading 30 degrees.
Left heading 30 degrees, 425 to golf.
For 52 Golf, did you want to follow the 737 to runway 4?
Yes, that would be great, 425 to golf.
For 52 Golf, roger. Follow the 737 and to runway 4, clear to land.
The controller thought that Dana was getting too close to the 737 trying to land on runway 4, so he wanted her to turn slightly to the left. Unfortunately, he said turn left heading 30 degrees, which isn't correct terminology. He should have said turn left 30 degrees. But because he used the word heading, Dana kept that left turn going, thinking that he meant a heading of 030 or a heading of 30 degrees. Keep in mind, at this point, she's gone from being cleared to land on runway 4 to cleared to land on runway 35, back to being cleared to land on runway 4. But now she's pointed away from the airfield, and the confusion is only going to get worse.
So am I turning a right base now, 425 to golf?
52 Golf, roger. Just maneuver back for the straight in. I don't know which way you're going now, so just turn back around to runway 35.
Turning to 35, I'm so sorry for the confusion, 425 to golf.
That's okay, we'll get it.
Dana didn't know which way they wanted her to go because she was still turning to that 030 heading. Unfortunately, the controller is also confused because he didn't know why Dana had turned so far, and that's why he changed the plan again and told her to turn around for runway 35. At this point, things are getting a little out of control, and this would have been a perfect time for the controller to say, you know what, we're just going to send her back to approach control for resequencing. We've changed her landing clearance multiple times between 2 different runways. She's not flying a standard pattern and something just doesn't seem right. However, Dana could have also spoken up and said, I want to be resequenced. And that way she can get pointed away from the airport and have a few minutes to collect her thoughts before she tried again.
We're 5-2 Golf. I need you to, okay, there you go. Straight into runway 35, clear to land.
Straight into 35, clear to land, and I don't believe I'm lined up for that. 4252 Golf.
Okay, 5-2 Golf, roger. Turn to the right and climb maintain 1,600, right turn.
1,600, right turn, 4252 Golf.
5-2 Golf, yes ma'am, heading about 040.
040, 4252 Golf.
More confusion going on and more pressure to land because there's still traffic trying to land on runway 4. As Dana turned back around and pointed at the runway, this was her position when she said she didn't believe she was lined up for 35. It's not clear why she said that because she was about 2 miles from the end of the runway and about 1,000 feet above the ground. Even though that's about 300 feet high, there was still plenty of room to correct back to the right and lose the altitude she needed to land. Regardless of the reason, the controller told her to climb up and turn to a heading of 040, and they were going to come up with a new plan, and Dana was finally going to get her first chance to land.
Here's 5-2 Golf. Okay, you're looking good. Just continue a right turn for runway 35. Do you see runway 35 still?
Yes, 35, 4252 Golf, have it in sight, continuing my roll around.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you're good. So you can start your descent to runway 35 there and clear to land on 35.
Clear to land 35, 4252 Golf, thank you very much.
No problems. Winds are 100 at 1,000 at 15, gust to 20.
Okay, thank you. Trying to lose altitude, 4252 Golf.
For 5-2 Golf, if you don't want to land, if that's too high, we can put you back around the downwind. Don't force it if you can't.
Okay, we'll see. Thank you, 4252 Golf.
As Dana tried to get set up for the approach, she never rolled out in the downwind and got the appropriate spacing she needed. The winds have gotten worse, and now she had a 15 to 20 knot crosswind with at least a 5 knot tailwind. By the time she rolled out, she was only about 1,200 feet above the ground and 1.5 miles from the runway. She needed to forward slip the aircraft, and that way she could maintain a safe airspeed while increasing the drag, which would help her lose the altitude that she needed to, but she also needed to correct for the winds and get back on the runway center line. It was a lot for her to do, but she kept trying to make it happen.
I think you're too high, Cirrus. 5-2 Golf, you might be too high.
Okay, we'll go around then, 4252 Golf.
Cirrus 5-2 Golf, roger. You're just going to make a right traffic now for runway 35. We'll come back around and we got it this time.
Sounds perfect, right traffic for 35, 4252 Golf.
When the controller said she was too high, she was about 250 feet above the ground with only about 3,500 feet of runway remaining, and she wasn't in a safe position to land. I don't know if she would have tried to land if he hadn't said anything, but thankfully she made the right decision to go around. My guess is the controller probably felt confident he could keep working her in the pattern since things had slowed down a little bit, and maybe she would be able to land on the next try. Unfortunately, he would be wrong.
For 5-2 Golf, make right downwind to runway 35, and you are clear to land. There'll be no other traffic for runway 4, so this one will be easy. 5-2 Golf, and there's the 737 on short final runway 4, touching down right in front of you, so just caution wide turbulence right there at that intersection.
Okay, I got that sight. Thank you, 4252 Golf.
5-2 Golf, winds 090 at 13, gust 18, runway 35, again clear to land.
35 clear to land, trying to get down again, 4252 Golf.
No problem.
4252 Golf going around, third time will be a charm.
Instead of making corrections to her pattern based on what had just happened, Dana allowed the crosswind to keep pushing her closer to the runway. She started her turn too early, and she ended up turning base at pretty much the same spot and the same altitude as she was on the last try. Unfortunately, she still couldn't lose altitude fast enough, and even though she got as low as 100 feet above the ground, she only had 1,500 feet of runway remaining, and there was no way she was going to land, so she made the decision on her own to go around, not realizing she only had moments left to live. Now I'm going to let this play all the way through until the crash because I want you to pay attention to what the controller said, and then I'm going to explain the truth about the mistake that got Dana and everyone else on board killed.
52 Golf going around. Third time will be a charm.
Okay, Cirrus 52 Golf. Just go ahead and make the left turn now to enter the downwind, midfield downwind for runway 4. If you can, just keep me a nice low, tight pattern. I'm going to have traffic 4 miles behind you, so I need you to just kind of keep it in tight if you could.
Okay, this time it'll be runway 4, turning left, 4252 Golf.
And actually, I might end up sequencing you behind that traffic. It's on 4 miles a minute. It is going to be a little bit tight with the one behind it. So when you get on that downwind, stay on the downwind. Advise me when you have that 737 in sight. We'll either do 4 or we might swing you around to 3-5. Ma'am, straighten up, straighten up.
That was way too long to be talking on the radio, giving a pilot instructions during a critical phase of flight. I'm sure the controller thought he was trying to be helpful, but it was just too much. And instead of focusing on flying the aircraft, Dana was most likely worried about listening to what the controller was saying and what she was supposed to do next. As she began the left turn, the aircraft stalled and it spun to the ground, crashing on top of an unoccupied car in a parking lot, killing Dana, Tony, and Jerry instantly. This was a busy airport, and Dana could have reduced her risk by choosing to land somewhere else. In my opinion, she didn't have enough experience flying in Class B airspace to handle the pace of things. The longer she stayed in the pattern, the more her attention shifted to outside the aircraft. She was too busy trying to find the 737s and trying to figure out the pattern and which runway she was landing on. The truth is, the final mistake that got Dana killed was her go-around procedures, something she probably hadn't practiced in a long time. According to the checklist, during a go-around, the steps are to increase power, raise the flaps to 50%, and then accelerate to 81 to 83 knots before you fully retract the flaps. On Dana's very first go-around from runway 4, she retracted the flaps at 76 knots. During her second go-around on the approach to runway 35, she retracted the flaps at 69 knots, and on the third go-around, Dana retracted the flaps at 58 knots, which was over 20 knots below the recommended flap retraction speed, and the aircraft stalled. Even though the aircraft had a parachute, she was too low to the ground and never had time to activate it. This was a heartbreaking mistake because there were so many opportunities for this tragedy to be avoided, but in the end, all the holes in the Swiss cheese lined up. I hope you were able to learn something from the debrief, and be sure to check out this other one on the screen, and thanks for your support.